This is the story of Joanna Stingray, a girl from California who found herself in 1980s Russia on the radar of the KGB and FBI for smuggling out underground Soviet music that Americans were never supposed to hear. Yeah, this music. This is Russian underground rock that the Kremlin never wanted to be written or performed, and they definitely didn't want anyone in the West to be listening to it. Rock music was a political tool in the Soviet Union, always, an import from the West and a threat to the system. So, how did underground music go mainstream in a country without freedom of expression? It's not like you could go pick up a guitar and compose music and start singing on the streets or in clubs there.
So I realized that I had this ability to show the world something they hadn't seen. You know, we were brought up being so afraid of the evil empire and Russia.
Joanna Stingray spent most of the 80s in Leningrad with underground rock royalty, camera in hand. She filmed their music videos, their concerts, and even their drunken nights out. She also fell in love. That's Yuri. More on him later. We're taking a deep dive into her video diaries from Russia as Joanna pulled open the Iron Curtain with an album called Red Wave.
Red Wave certainly was one of the first glimpses of Russian music around the world. Certainly for the States. We knew probably nothing about there even being rock bands that existed over there.
That's Joanna in 1983. She was an LA musician who wasn't really getting anywhere in the States, so she hopped a plane for Russia, looking for some adventure. Her understanding of the Soviet Union was, well, not that much different from most Americans. She thought it was cold, gray, and miserable.
And I remember thinking, oh boy, this will be fun. There can't be any rock in Russia. This is going to be a joke. Wait till they see me.
And to the outsider, there wasn't real rock and roll in Russia. Everything had to go through the state or be approved by censors and the KGB. But rockers made it happen anyway. In cramped communal apartments, in abandoned buildings, on rooftops, there was an underground movement out of sight of the Kremlin and the KGB.
They didn't like the way rock looked. I think they didn't like the way that it riled up the audience. I think they thought, like a lot of people did, that rock and roll led to rebellion and led to craziness.
But let's go back to Joanna. It's now 1984, she's in Leningrad and about to meet Boris Grebenshchikov. Boris is a cult hero, a poet, a musician without a stage. This guy was the Bob Dylan of Russia. This was a guy who had fans travel the entire span of the USSR. That's 6,000 miles, twice the distance between LA and New York, just to come and shake his hand. When Boris recorded new music and made, let's say 30 tapes, the black market would get to work, and those 30 tapes would become 1 million in just a month. This guy was an underground legend.
And I went there for a week thinking I would go and see this horrible place and never go back. And it turned out to be a place that moved me, and it grabbed me, and it got me so jazzed up I couldn't think of anything else but getting back into Russia.
A certain mop-haired guitarist probably had something to do with that. Yuri is the guy I mentioned earlier. Though he and Joanna didn't quite speak the same language, they soon made plans to marry. Young, crazy, and in love. But before that happy day, Joanna had work to do. Over the next 2 years, she skirted back and forth between LA and the USSR, carrying donated guitars and keyboards with her. And on every plane ride back, she left with recordings, lyrics, and music videos of Leningrad's top underground rock bands. She stuffed all this cultural contraband into the soles of her shoes and linings of her coats. Red Wave would soon become a hit in the US. It seemed like Joanna was actually helping to build a cultural bridge between the US and Russia. Young Americans watched the Red Wave music videos and thought, oh hey, these guys look like rockers here.
I'm with two of the members of one of the top bands, Elisa, and you're watching MTV.
MTV! Joanna set a wedding date and bought a dress. But then, of course, this happened.
And a telex came back from Moscow that said, Moscow is not expecting Joanna Stingray. It was a message sent from them that here's your payback for doing that record.
Joanna was labeled by the Soviet Union as an enemy of the state. She couldn't get back into Mary Yuri, and the following months were agonizing. Her star had risen, but then she was punished for it. She took her case to the national press.
No isn't a word that's in our vocabulary in terms of this problem. We know it could be difficult, it could take a lot of time, but it's gonna happen. Somehow we'll make it happen.
And sure enough, it did happen. Joanna's not entirely sure how, but she thinks her enemy status was revoked as an act of goodwill between America and Russia. And Gorbachev was supposedly a fan of rock music, and a copy of the album did make its way to his desk. So she returned to Leningrad, and Joanna and Yuri had their rock and roll, fairy tale, Russian wedding. Things changed really quickly after that. It was a time of perestroika and glasnost, change and openness. None of the old rules seemed to apply anymore. Indie record labels even began popping up in Russia. Leningrad's rockers went from risking arrest to playing sold-out shows all over the country. They used music to help crack open the USSR to the rest of the world. And ultimately, that made the Cold War just a little bit warmer.